All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. This is, I believe, our fourth webinar celebrating CTE month. And today we're going to be discussing how to better serve students with barriers. And we have Jolene Konieczki, Emily Quick, and Ashley Holm with us today. I'm going to thank them at the beginning and at the end and in between for joining us. These panels are so important to get lots of voices in on these conversations. So I am going to let them each introduce themselves, and then we will get started with our discussion. There is a chat option. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panel, please feel free. We have somebody watching the chat for us. So feel free to join the conversation if you'd like to. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to get started with Jolene and have her introduce herself.
Oh, thank you. So I am Jolene Konieczny. I'm the Director of English as a Second Language, Federal Programs, Accreditation, and Career and Tech Ed at the Huron School District. I've been in the role of CTE for 8 years, and this is my 4th year as ESL Federal Programs Director.
Thank you. Ashley?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Holm, and I am in the Department of Education. Specifically, I'm the Migrant Director, and I just started in June of 2023, so I've got about 8 months under my belt here, and previously before that, I taught for 6 years.
Thank you, Ashley. Emily, we'll leave it to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Quick. I work for the South Dakota Department of Education within the Office of Title Programs, and I am the State Coordinator for the McKinney-Vento Program, State Coordinator for Title I Part D, and also the Private School Ombudsman. And I've been in my role for a year and a half.
Thank you, Emily. We're going to get started today. First of all, I would just like all three of you to address for us, because I think everybody has a different definition, but if all three of you could answer the question of how you specifically define students with barriers.
I can start. I wrote it down. And truly, it's such a big encompassing definition, but really it's any challenge that hinders a student from full participation and being academically successful.
I kind of thought something similar. I was just thinking a student with any sort of issue outside of the school setting that's going to affect their academic performance, whether that be poverty, hunger, if they're specifically like my program, migrant, or even bullying within the school. So any sort of issue that might kind of affect their academic performance.
And I will pretty much echo what Jolene and Ashley said as well. My first thought was a student with barriers is someone who is unable to fully access or fully engage in the learning process due to barriers, like Ashley said, poverty, lack of housing, shelter, food, just lack of basic hygiene supplies, clothing, etc. So it can look just very different depending on the student, of course.
Can you guys get a little deeper with that for me? Like some other just specific like categories of students that I know poverty, homelessness, but like specifically what we see in South Dakota schools, what are specific categories? Like I know, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who maybe there's categories of students in their school that they don't quite consider students that are facing barriers. So could you go a little deeper on what those students might look like?
For Huron, I mean, EL population is a huge part of it. We have a lot of migrants, immigrants, refugees. So SLIFE students with limited and interrupted formal education. So they come to us at the high school level with maybe a 2nd grade education, and maybe it was 10 years ago. So being able to meet them where they're at, cultural barriers, language is a key part. We have 20 languages and 29 countries represented within our district from K-12. So being able to communicate with all of those is a barrier. And then you have your typical physical, maybe someone's in a wheelchair, they can't perform all of the duties that might be needed in an academic program. How do you adapt to that? And then you see a lot of social emotional, especially post-COVID. How do we meet the needs of those kids? That seems to be a barrier in the kids performing at their academic highest.
Thank you, Jolene. I think that pretty much sums up anything that I might know or whatever, because she's in the district right now. So thank you for sharing that.
So of those barriers, like those categories, Ashley or Emily, did you have other categories to add to that? Okay, yeah, of those barriers, like those like students that you're seeing, what in your experience, what's the biggest like population of students with barriers in South Dakota? I know that for Jolene specifically, it's English learners, but just at your regular average mid-sized school district, like what's most districts dealing with?
I honestly can't really say. I mean, since I've started at the Department of Ed, I've mostly been with the migrant stuff, and then I work closely with Sherry Lord, who's the EL teacher. So I know that some districts, even the smaller districts, are struggling, I think, because there are an influx of EL students, and whether that school does not have an EL staff, or maybe they only have one, and then their caseload is large, and they can't handle all of the students that are coming in. So I'm struggling with maybe finding additional certified EL staff, I think is kind of big right now.
Emily, do you have anything to add to that? I was just going to ask, it kind of on that theme is interpreters and stuff, a huge issue that everybody is seeing, would you say?
Yeah,
Yes,
I would
think
agree
so.
with that. Mhm.
Sounds good. So in your experience, what are some effective methods that teachers can adopt in the classroom to help students overcome barriers?
We, in Huron, we have found the SIAP method to be extremely beneficial. We have all of our staff trained. That's our new teachers go through the training with our instructional coaches. It's sheltered instruction observation protocol. And even though it's targeted toward English learners, it's just good teaching. You're building the background, you're teaching the vocabulary, you're engaging students where they're at and scaffolding them to the next level, the I do, we do, you do. So all of those good teaching strategies that are research-based are built into that. And so if, you know, I would recommend if districts have an opportunity to look into that, but as a teacher, you know, there's SIAP videos out there, you can Google it, you know, best teaching practices and just engaging everyone.
Wonderful. I just recently was able to attend the National ESEA conference and got to hear the National Teacher of the Year, Rebecca Peterson, talk. And she was able to kind of just talk about making sure that the students know that they have a seat at the table, making sure you build that trust and they know that they belong. She had said that kids spell love TIME, so just spending that time with them and just building that trust and letting them know that they belong. I think that was really powerful. So if you have a chance to listen to Rebecca Peterson, she is a really great speaker, and it was great to listen to her.
I'm gonna
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna add in, Kara, especially with CTE courses, since they're so hands-on, two really effective things are formative assessments, making sure you're assessing as the students are going through it, circulating the classroom, and providing timely feedback. As an adult, I know I expect timely feedback, or if I send an email, yep, hey, got it. And so we need to remember that those are the same expectations that our students want and need in order to be successful as well.
Thank you, Jolene. Kind of keeping going with that conversation, how has the changes in the students with barriers that we've seen in South Dakota over the last couple of decades, how do you approach like the holistic approach, like their families and their home lives and the cultural barriers. I'm sure that that's pretty significant when it comes to messaging and getting students headed in the right direction. Is there specific tools that schools can use?
I don't always want to be the first one to answer. You know, our population has continued to come to Huron. So I wasn't here when the Karen population came over 10 years ago. And it's been more than that, but you know, we're seeing second generation families and students. So they understand, but number one, being able to provide communication in their language is huge, which we are fortunate to have multiple paraeducators that are bilingual, as well as a full-time Karen interpreter. And then, you know, figuring out what each culture's priorities are, because not every culture values education. A lot of our migrant families come to work. Their 16, 17-year-olds come to work. They may not come legally, which is okay. We don't want to discriminate. We're not going to discriminate, but we have to know at the forefront of this kid is here not to come to school. So how can we provide them with the skills that they need in order to be a successful citizen and, you know, person in the community? What classes, what is going to be best for that student? So it's really kind of an individualized plan. And you really need to keep that in the forefront. At least I feel that, you know, when we register new kids and new families, I always ask, you know, like, what brought you here? What do you want to do after you graduate? Do you want to graduate? You know, and all of those questions that help me tell the school that, hey, they're interested in these type of classes, or they haven't had an education since second grade, or they were going to school in Vietnam up until they left, and, you know, they were taking these classes and they want to be a doctor. So how can we provide them with the best education in order for them to be successful, whether that results in a diploma or not? I mean, a student can't get 24 credits in a matter of 2 years. It's not possible. So how can we best provide for them in their situation, while communicating that urgency and importance to the families without stepping on their toes and going, well, we know what's best for your child. Because then you're going to lose the family and probably their extended family, and, you know, you risk losing part of that culture. Sorry, long answer.
I can't really add anything else to that. Thank you, Jolene.
No, thank you, Jolene. That's exactly what I was looking for. Jamie, is there a question in the chat?
Yes, we do have one. It is for CTE classes. What are some ways to support newcomers that are mixed within the general student body?
That is a great question, because we get those a lot. We have our HIL classes, which highly intensive language learners for new students to the country at the high school level. So that takes up 2 or 3 of 2 classes every day. We're a block schedule. And so we try to put them, like, my priority and the counselor's priority as well, get them in hands-on classes that, so like cooking, something that you can do a lot of visuals. Obviously not going to probably put them in auto or welding. A horticulture class, we see a lot of our newcomers. And a lot of that is because you're already going to have students in there that aren't newcomers, but aren't exited EL students either. So that provides a good opportunity for them to have an in-class interpreter. Now, Joe, I don't know if you have any other EL learners in your district, or if it's just you're starting to get newcomers, but using the students as interpreters for each other is a huge key.
Wonderful. I don't have anything specific like Jolene does, but I think just generally making sure that the families and the students both understand what the CTE courses are. That most CTE classes probably include hands-on learning, and that's probably good for those students who aren't quite proficient yet. And just making sure that you promote those opportunities for them and show them the possibilities that they can still be a part of that stuff.
Yeah, I'll add from the outside looking in, I visited Huron not too long ago and walked through some of the district's classrooms, and I think that was probably my favorite part of my visit was watching current students do a lot of the interacting for the English learners and interpreting for them. And I even had several instructors tell us how invaluable that resource was and how it really helps the existing students learn and grow as people as well. So it's kind of a win-win. So I really enjoyed that aspect of our visit there. So.
And I think, excuse me, I think as an adult, as a leader, you have to be vulnerable with those students and show that you want to learn. You know, learn a little bit of Spanish, learn a little bit of Vietnamese or Korean. I remember when I was assistant principal at the high school, I was supervising lunch, and there were some Korean students, and I said, I want to learn how to say, I don't even know, like hello or goodbye or how are you or something in Korean. And he repeated to me over and over and over, and I tried to repeat it over and I failed every time. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I can't do this. And he looked at me, and I will never forget his face. And he said, now you understand what it's like to learn another language. I'm like, okay, all right, let's keep going. And so to be vulnerable with those students, and that helps build the relationship. Whenever I register new families up here, I don't know Vietnamese or Korean, but I'll go, you know, Poquito Español, pero muy mal, and they'll laugh. It means I know a little bit of Spanish, but I'm really bad. So it'll laugh, and it'll open up that relationship to allow for those questions of what do you want to do?
Thank you, Jolene. Here's a big question for you. When thinking about how students with barriers can succeed in a CTE classroom, where should we set the bar on what success looks like? Because the bar is, I'm assuming, very different.
Kara, I think I would argue with you on that. Because I think if we lower the bar, we're setting substandards, and we're saying just because you have something that doesn't allow you, that maybe you struggle a little bit more, or that prohibits you from being 100% successful, we say, oh, you're just going to be right here. Everybody else is going to strive for this. I think we have to set the same expectations, but we have to be willing to provide that scaffolding in order for them to reach that. Because if we lower the bar, then we're defeating the purpose of providing a solid foundation for career and technical education.
If a CTE teacher is getting students in a classroom that, like you had mentioned earlier, maybe education isn't important to them, maybe graduating is not important to them, and maybe they're not buying in like the rest of, or like the teacher is, or some of the classes, like how do you keep them moving forward if they feel like they're just buying their time there?
I will say that, excuse me, I apologize. I will say that a majority of our students, if they're struggling and not wanting to come to school and want to go to work, they will come to their CTE classes because those teachers have formed a relationship with them and saying, this is what you can do with this, or, you know, you can use this in the workforce. So they seem to buy into that more than, you know, learning English or, now, obviously, do we want to be able for them to attend all of their classes? Yes. But if getting them here and in those classes where they feel successful may build, and eventually, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, they come to other classes. But we still have kids that, yep, they're not going to come. I mean, I have done home visits and talked to parents and you know, what do you want and those type of things. And that's part of it too, building those relationships with those parents and knowing that you care. Sometimes that's all it takes.
Thank you. Ashley and Emily, just could you each of you touch for a few minutes on specifically what your role, like your office at the Department of Education, what supports you can offer for schools? I think it's important for folks to understand that there is resources out there.
Sure. So as the migrant director, if you have any migrant students that come in, you send in a COE and I either approve or deny that COE depending on the worker, if they're doing temporary or agricultural work. And then that automatically qualifies the student for title services if you're in a title, a targeted assistance title program. And then it also gets them free and reduced meals for 3 years. They don't have to do any more paperwork within that 3-year time period. They're automatically qualified for 36 months. And then we also we are part of a consortium here in South Dakota that we can utilize something called the Migrant Literacy Net, which is just an online tool that helps with math and reading for those students.
And then for everything involving McKinney-Vento, I have frequent contact with district liaisons. Oftentimes it's talking through different situations, case by case, of course, as to, you know, whether or not a student could be identified as McKinney-Vento, what services and supports could be offered to them. But then with that, I also have frequent communication with parents who are calling or emailing, asking questions, wanting to know more information about the program. And so I have a lot of phone and email conversations where we talk through what the purpose of the program is, you know, why it's in place, how it is there to truly help students and to remove those barriers so that they can have equal access to the same free and appropriate public education as everyone else. So of course, districts have responsibilities to improve enrollment and retention, to remove those barriers, but then also to provide support for those transitions. So whether that be from preschool to kindergarten or whether that be from high school to college or career ready. So the liaison is really the, you know, kind of boots on the ground person within the districts. It is their responsibility to make contact with families to identify those who are eligible for those supports and services. And with McKinney-Vento, it's, you know, automatically eligible for free breakfast and free lunch, but it's also so much more than just that. You know, there's wraparound services, there's any and all supplies that are needed to fully attend and participate school. It might be cell phone, it might be Wi-Fi and a hotspot at their place of residency so that they can continue to do their homework or coursework. So it really is just providing all of those services and supports to families. So like I said, I have frequent communication with many liaisons across the state. Oftentimes that, you know, those who have been in the role for many, many years and there's just a super unique situation, or it's districts calling in for the first time because they haven't identified a student in years. So that support can look different on my end, just depending on what their need is. But of course, technical assistance, I mean, everything that can be provided at the state level to our districts and parents as well.
And we did have a question in the chat that was answered, but I will make sure to say it. Is the Migrant Literacy Net available for anyone, or must they be flagged as migrant family? And the answer from Ashley was anyone. It's free to use with any students, and she did provide the link in the chat if you wanted to view that.
Yeah, thank you. So even if you have just specifically EL students, it's available in both English and in Spanish. And there are things that the parents themselves can use on there to help themselves with literacy and things like that.
Thank you, Ashley. I have a follow-up question, Jolene. I was thinking about something you mentioned earlier, that all of your staff participates in specific training, you know, coming in because of your diverse student population. How important is it just, you know, when we're talking about culture, not necessarily the family's culture or the specific culture of where your students came from, but how is it different in Huron, just the culture of the school in accepting these families and making them part of your district? Like, how important is your staff to that?
I think at the beginning, as a community as a whole, it was extremely difficult. You know, you're in this white suburban neighborhood and you don't want newcomers coming in and especially ones that are refugees and so that transition, although I wasn't here, I've heard a lot about it, was extremely difficult. So it is super important in our vision. We are Huron. And so we want our staff to represent our students. And so we have been extremely fortunate in being able to grow that, which provides for a strong culture as well. You know, I feel that all of our staff, not just our CTE teachers, are very open. It's created a real world version of what's out there beyond high school for our students. You know, I have 3 young children, 2 are in school, 1 is not yet. And they don't think of their friends as being brown or speaking a different language or having a funny name. It's just another kid to them. And that's the fortunate thing about our district too, is we're grade level. So our socioeconomic status of parents doesn't affect where they go to school. All of our kindergarten and first graders go to the same building. Teachers are able to plan together, which really helps with that culture as well. They're able to build off of each other and just provide that positive environment for each other, for the students and for the parents. And so I just feel that it's such a deep rooted, strong thing here in Huron that we know that how important it is to have a good culture within our staff, in addition to, you know, knowing the family's cultures.
Jamie, I see, I think Amy had a question in the chat. Would you mind?
Yes, absolutely. When a teacher gets a student with a new barrier like EL, migrant, homelessness, etc., for the first time, what advice would you give them to navigate those waters, especially in a district unlike Huron, where this is a new challenge for those districts?
You know, I would say reach out to your community. Find someone in your community that might be able to help you. Find a Facebook group, which sounds silly to say that, but you know, I'm in several EL groups. You know, oh my gosh, we just got a student that's a newcomer and we don't have any, you know, how do we teach them English? Where do we start? We start with the alphabet, where to number, you know, all of those things is so to build a community that you can go to and know that no question is a stupid question. Never hesitate going to your administrator and going, this is what I'm thinking. I know it's, you know, it's out in left field or it's outside of the box of traditional education. How do I make this student, you know, you want to make them feel like this is part of their home. So, you know, whoever you can communicate with, whether it's reaching out to myself or another district that is struggling through that as well. I mean, I talked with Ashley and Emily quite a bit. We don't have a lot of homeless, so I don't talk to Emily a whole lot, but, you know, Ashley and Sherry, I'm going, okay, would this qualify? What does this do? So never hesitate. And not every district has a director either. So, you know, go to the state resources and go, oh my gosh, can you direct me in, you know, where can you direct me? Who can I talk to that has gone through this or has the growing pains of this is where they're at and this is what we're doing. Did that answer your question, Amy?
It did. Thank you.
All right, it is approaching 1:30. I'm gonna ask each of you to share any final thoughts on this topic and just your best advice for South Dakota schools on how to integrate students with barriers into their CTE classrooms.
I can start. You know, when I took this position as ESL for 4 years ago, I'd had CTE and I'd had the experience in the high school as assistant principal level, and I thought it was crazy combining the two positions. But I didn't want to lose my growth with CTE. And it has been, and I just talked to my superintendent, Dr. Steinhoff, yesterday. I said, this is the oddest but most powerful combination for a job description that I have ever been in. And you don't think about those things, but I'm advocating for those students that and families that don't necessarily can advocate for themselves. So I'm going to go back to the question of you said, you know, where do we set the bar? We set it high. If we don't, then we're selling ourselves short and we're selling our students short. And we just need to maintain and know that they can get there, but they might not all get there at the same time.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jolene. And I'll just kind of reiterate what I've said before, making sure those students know that they have a seat at the table, they have trust and belonging, and just making sure that the students themselves, their families, they know that they have those opportunities, and making sure that they know that the possibility is there and that they're going to be held to the same kind of like what Jolene said, the bar is high, held to that same standard, even if they can't achieve it at the same time as those other students in their classes, that they could still get there at some point.
You both said it very well, and I can't necessarily speak to the teacher level. Of course, within my position, I'm just not involved at that level. But I will say for McKinney-Vento and students experiencing homelessness, that's where our liaisons really come into play. And it's sort of their responsibility, or is their responsibility, to, of course, provide some professional development to district staff, school counselors, et cetera, who may be involved in that CTE work. And I would say, especially for our students who are identified as unaccompanied homeless youth, meaning that they are no longer living in the physical custody of their parent or guardian, oftentimes those are students who are couch surfing, who may be staying at their boyfriend or girlfriend's house, or they're jumping, you know, from friend's house to friend's house. And so they're lacking that potential adult supervision or a caregiver in their lives. And so oftentimes it's school that we look to as, you know, the place of stability and support. And so for those teachers to just really understand what McKinney-Vento is and the trauma that is oftentimes associated with homelessness. You know, we really stress to our liaisons to kind of approach each situation and conversation with some empathy and sensitivity, because you just don't know what's been going on, especially for our highly mobile youth. And so for our unaccompanied homeless youth, oftentimes it is that teacher in the school or a coach in the school that becomes that support person in their lives. And so CTE classes or even gen ed classes, just having that support, as Ashley talked about, you know, having someone give them, you know, the time of day to just check in, connect with them, see what's going on. And the liaison is oftentimes that person as well, just making sure that their needs are met, that there aren't any additional services or supports that need to be provided to those students. So I would just say, you know, knowledge, have a good understanding of what these students facing barriers may be going through, and then just doing the best you can at the district level to you know, distribute informational materials and provide that intentional outreach, not always in the school itself, but also in places throughout the community where those students or those families might frequent as well.
Thank you, Ashley. So one final time, I'm gonna give Ashley and Emily and Jolene a huge thank you for joining us today. We can't do this without volunteers and your guys' expertise and experience. And this was really valuable for our audience today. And I think I can say that all of you are available if anybody would like to reach out for specific questions concerning our conversations today. I know you've all been wonderful resources for me personally, our office. So I know that I can say that with confidence that you would do the same for anybody joining us today. I'm gonna check the chat one more time. I just had a thank you there. No more questions. So I am going to let everybody go. And once again, thank you and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.